What's up, guys? Welcome back to another daily Bible reading snapshot. Today we're looking at Judges 18 and 19 here in the Old Testament. And I just want you to see if the book of Judges was a staircase, it would not be going up, it would be going down. Okay, because the book of Judges keeps getting worse and worse. And today we see even more sin and even more outrageous things that you'd think, how could the Israelites ever do this? After receiving the law from Moses, how could they ever become these people? Well, it's because they kept serving themselves. And it says at the beginning of Judges 18, in those days there was no king in Israel, which didn't just talk about no political king, no David or Saul or Solomon. It was talking about they weren't even serving God. God wasn't their king either. So it says because of that, you had a person in Dan, you had the tribe of Dan seeking an inheritance. And you'd say, wait a minute, didn't they have an inheritance? Well, they did, but if you remember where their inheritance was, it was close to the Mediterranean Sea, and that's where a lot of the Philistine action was. So basically, they never really got into their land fully because they didn't take that land with faith. The people of Dan never really got their land because they didn't trust God and they didn't go take it in the end of the book of Joshua like they should have. And because of that, they want a city, they want a place to be, and they don't want to fight because on the west coast of the nation of Israel, there's a lot of Philistines fighting everybody. They're like, we just want to be on the east side. We just want to be in a quiet little place. So it says they found this place up in the north, a town called Laish. And Laish was a pretty quiet, sleepy town. And because of this, they say, we want to be up here. So it only took 600 men, and they got these men from Dan together, and they went up to this place. But on the way, as they were going up, it says that they went to that Micah guy that we talked about yesterday, who had that Levite who became the priest, who set up that idolatrous system in his own house. I mean, how far have we come for Israel? They've turned again from God, and they're serving idols. And it says they go to this guy and say, hey, I know Micah gave you that money for that statue, that idol. How cool would it be if you weren't just a priest for one man? How cool would it be if you were a priest for an entire tribe? Why don't you come up with us to this new place that we're going to settle? And he agrees and he goes. This is bad. And it says they go up to Laish. They were quiet people in verse 27. They struck them with the edge of the sword and burned the city with fire. There's no one to deliver them because the closest city was Sidon, and that was far away, and they didn't deal with anybody. So there's all these cities down in the south, but it was kind of more rural or out of town, more rundown countryside up there. Not so much of the city states that were on the west coast. So anyway, so they take this city. That was evil. They should not have done that. It was wrong. They had an inheritance that God gave them, and they took another one. And they killed these people, innocent people just in their land, for not doing anything wrong. So this is bad. And it says that in verse 31, so Micah's carved image they set up as long as the house of God was at Shiloh. So that statue and that idolatrous system stayed there for a long time up in the north. And then in verse 19, it says you got another Levite who had a concubine, which is not okay. It's not okay to take a wife and then some other women to hang along with you. Like, that's not cool. So he says he had this concubine, and she left him. And that was weird. She left him, went back to her parents' house that was actually, funny enough, in Bethlehem. So they go back down to Bethlehem, and he says, hey, you got to come join me again. Come back to our family. And this concubine says, okay, I guess so. She doesn't really want to. She's reluctant. And it says the father-in-law, so this girl's dad, says, why don't you stay here for a while? Stay here for a while. And they stay. And they stay another night and another night. And the guy finally says, look, we got to leave now. We have to leave. And as they're journeying from Bethlehem, they pass Jerusalem, which is only like 5 or 6 miles. And then there's another city up top above it called Gibeah. But the problem was Jerusalem, they didn't want to stay there because that was not an Israelite city at the time. It was a city of Jebus, and it was not okay for them to just spend the night in some foreign city. They're like, we're going to get attacked by these people. So they go up to Gibeah, which was a city where the Benjaminites lived. So they thought, at least it would be better for us to stay with the Benjaminites than for us to stay with the Jebusites. Well, so they thought. It said they get there, nobody even lets them inside their house. They're sleeping in the town square, and this sojourner comes up and says, hey, guys, why don't you just come with me? Because nobody's going to give you hospitality, and the men in the city are evil. And it says that these people, they go into this sojourner's house, they're spending the night there, they're eating there, and as they're eating and taking rest, these evil men from Benjamin come, and they want to come and violate these people. They want to do horrible things to them. And the sojourner is pleading with them. And this should remind you of Genesis 18 and 19 with the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah. This is exactly what happened before. And I think the author of Judges is writing in such a way to prove that the sin of the Benjaminites was like the sin of the Sodomites. And this is horrible, bad stuff. And it says that, fine. He says, take my concubine, let her go outside. And when she's outside, she is completely violated, and it's horrible. And it says that so much so that she died that night. She's killed by the hands of these evil men that are outside, which there's some evil, a lot of evil in this. Why did he let his concubine go out there? That was not okay. Why did these Benjaminites do this? That was not okay. There's no good person in this story. Both sides are evil here. And it says that in the end, this guy takes his dead second, third wife, concubine, cuts her up into 12 different pieces. You see how this is bad stuff is going on. Cuts her up in 12 different pieces and sends those pieces out to all the 12 tribes of Israel to show how bad and evil the Benjaminites were. And what that's going to set up for tomorrow is a civil war where all of Israel fights against Benjamin because of how evil they were. So can you see how the staircase is just going down and down and down in the book of Judges? It's getting worse and worse. And all of this started with a sentence in the beginning of chapter 18, that said there was no king in Israel. They were not following God. They were not serving anyone but themselves. And that's what happens when we don't serve God and we just serve ourselves. So that's Judges 18 and 19. Let's turn to the New Testament. We're looking at the second half of Luke chapter 10. Some familiar territory here, so I'm not going to explain too much, but there's this parable of the Good Samaritan, a person who is self-giving. Instead of someone who is selfish, doing whatever they want, they're giving. And it says this story was in the context of a person trying to justify himself, saying, yeah, I'm sure I've earned God's favor. I'm sure I'm good enough. And Jesus says, well, do you love your neighbor as yourself? And the guy says, well, who's my neighbor? Who do I really have to love? And Jesus tells a story to show that your neighbor is not just the person who lives next door to you. It's anybody that you can come in contact with. That's loving your neighbor as yourself. So that's the context of this story. Then we see another story about service, Martha and Mary, where Mary is listening to Jesus carefully. Martha is doing most of the serving. Martha gets mad at Mary. I could imagine this is an older and a younger sister. I can just imagine that Martha's the older sister, Mary's probably the younger sister, and they're fighting with each other because Mary is listening to Jesus and Martha's doing all the work. And it says that after this, Jesus turned to Martha and said, hey, you're busy with so much of this serving, but one thing is necessary. And Mary has chosen the good portion, which won't be taken away from her. Which I think both of these stories next to each other should make us see the importance of service, but also that service is really about our display of our love for Christ. The Good Samaritan showed love by putting others first. Martha, it seems like her service in some way was selfish because it seems like she wasn't doing what Jesus wanted. And although she was putting other people first and serving Mary and serving Jesus, it seems like Jesus gives this subtle rebuke. So service, we just need to remember, service is not an end in itself. Service needs to be motivated by our love for Christ. Just like this Good Samaritan was motivated by his love for his neighbor, we need to love one another, and that really should be motivated by our love for God and the love that God has shown us. So that's today's daily Bible reading. There's a big difference between the Old Testament and the New Testament today, but hopefully as you think about this, we want to be like this Good Samaritan, showing love to one another, not being like these people in the book of Judges, sinfully, selfishly doing whatever they wanted. So thanks for reading with us. We'll see you back tomorrow for another daily Bible reading snapshot.